Okay, so hello and welcome each and every one to a monthly live session, Living in the Flow. Over to you, dear Tanya.
Hello, 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 and thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this delicious sensuality. Today, that's our theme. It's already oh, exquisite.
Exactly. And look, if you can see, we've got here tropical flowers, and I put some snowflakes on just to show that it's nearly Christmas. And I wish everybody a wonderful Christmas. And it matters not whether you spend it with your family or, in a lockdown, or whether you're separated, or whether you are taking time for yourself because you're going through some really deep stuff and deep integrations. You are where you're meant to be. Look at your life, that you are exactly where you're meant to be, and let go of comparing yourself to other people, because they too are on their path and whatever they're doing. And things change. Like if you are in those deep integrations time, you're walking through the shadow of the darkness and shadow of through the valley of darkness and all of these shadowy things. Don't worry, because you do come out on the other side. You come out integrated, you come out whole, you come out joyful, you come out just whole, completely different kind of being.
Yeah, and there is really no way to be able to experience this delicious sensuality that we're sharing about today without sitting with those fears, without really being the one that is finally here. Finally, I am accountable. I can take care of all of that which seems to be broken but is not. And this, I believe, is such an important piece that many times, as a small human self, we believe ourselves to be broken. But in fact, we've never been broken. We've just left some pieces here and there in order to experience that kind of thing, that kind of separateness. Anyhow, the only way to be able to experience oneness, reunion within, is to sit still so that that illusion of brokenness can dissolve, so that those walls that have separated us, which were put there on purpose and for the reason of experiencing something, and now something completely new. How creative we were to experience something completely different, that's radically going into separateness, so that we could radically become love all over again. And this is basically also part of the delicious sensuality. So, the part of walking through the valley of darkness in not being able to see clearly is part of this delicious sensuality. Because once we can walk in that valley and realize that we are indestructible, that we are not broken, we just seem to be, then those fears, those bits and pieces that were scattered out there can all come and join as the scepter of our knowingness we hold in our hand is the joint sum total of all of that. That it's like, then it becomes a magic wand, but like a huge one that we can walk with, a walking stick, basically. The sum total of all of those fears, of all of that which seemed to be separate and broken. And this has to do with intensity. Yeah, I mean, sometimes along the way we get afraid of intensity because throughout our lifetimes it's become pretty intense. But we have chosen to be here on earth precisely because of the intensity. So at some point, there's no more way to avoid it.
Mm.
Over to
Yes.
you, dear Alexis.
Thank you. Yeah, and you said this so beautifully, because there is no way to avoid it. And there is no way to come into the now moment without walking through that, valley of darkness. And the valley of darkness really is just you picking up all of those lost parts, all of those lost parts of yourself that people, when they are still unintegrated, when they're in separation, they keep running away from, because they are afraid, because they think, like you said, mentioned in different words, those things are too intense. Most people in a that we call normal, that are in a mass consciousness, are actually afraid of themselves. And that is why they continually run with their focus, with their presence, with their consciousness through mind. They're using their mind. It is not really mind that is, how can I say, that has decided all this. It is the consciousness inside that has decided. And then it focuses in the mind, and then the mind takes it into the future, takes it into the past for worrying into the future, because you continually worry about things. You continually maybe think what you have to do, but you are not present in the now moment, because when your presence is in the future, you can't actually do or sort out anything in the now moment, because you're not present with yourself. You're not present with your body. You're not present with anything. You're not present with your soul. And then another way is also to go into the past and to try to change it in your mind. But in your mind, firstly, the mind doesn't remember all the details of the past. It just pulls out sort of your how can I say, habits, if to support victimhood. So for example, if you're victim in a certain way, then your mind will just pick and choose those things that it thinks happened in the past that support your victimhood. So then all of a sudden you think your past is all just one big victim, when in reality there is so much that has gone on. And then there are, of course, those levels and layers that you go through. When you're in the mind, you think, wow, the past, you can't change it, because through the mind and you're going into the past, you can't change it. And then as you're integrating yourself, you're coming back to yourself, which meaning into this now moment. And in this now moment, then all of a sudden that magic happens when you realize that the past is very much alive, that the past also is actually present here with you in the now moment. And it's very different to what you thought, what your mind thought, because you are all of a sudden now in the now moment in your senses rather than just in the mind. Mind is also one sense, you see, and it's got a particular job. And its job is not to run your life, it's not to tell you about the past, not to change your past. But when you are in the now moment, present, allowing your greater self, your grand self, your soul self, then it becomes really possible. Not only it's possible, but it's normal and natural that the past keeps changing, because everything is in the now moment. The future keeps changing. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing is complete. It's all keeps changing. It all keeps, if you like to use that word, healing or changing or becoming whole, all of those past lives, the parallel lives. So we are using all these words, and I use all these kind of words, but they're not entirely accurate, but we have to use them, whether you use past life or parallel life, they are all now lives, you see. So we just don't get stuck on little things. And this is what happens with majority of people when you are in separation. We make things that are insignificant. So firstly, nothing is insignificant in your life. So because all of your life is sacred, but people, when they are in separation, they make big things that are not important, you see. So then they get stuck into mulling over those things that they make into big. And the mass consciousness also supports not important things to be big, so that you lose track of what is really important. And the real important is simplicity, the now moment, being with you, your feelings, your sensuality, your gentleness, your being present, your self-love. You see, these are the important things, not whether what kind of color is your carpet, what, what if something broke, your car broke, or this or that. You see, they are part of your life, but they are not so big. They are much smaller. They're smaller things. And when you make them that big, and you make yourself also into a victim, because all of a sudden they just take over. But when you keep having to then come back to yourself, to that now moment, into breathing, and it's all of these tools are always with you, wherever you are, however you are, wherever you find yourself. You can always take those few deep breaths and just come back to yourself, come back into the consciousness, and let go of everything else, because everything else then naturally sorts itself. And life is messy, and it always will be messy. As a master, it doesn't matter how enlightened you are, it is the nature of earthly life, of physical life, to be messy. And once you accept these kind of things, that this is just here like a big playground, like children, we're supposed to get messy, we're supposed to get dirty when we're playing. It's not like when you have a child. I mean, if you put it just in some kind of completely over clean space, it doesn't have, build up immunity. It doesn't build up its spontaneity. So it's very similar in this way, that life is always going to be a little bit messy. It's never going to be perfect. And it's perfect in a sense, like the mind wants it to be perfect, but it's perfect in its messiness, because also we don't want to be stuck here. You see, we are this being, cosmic being, beyond any physical reality. And this is just a small part. And it is the part that is as precious as everything, but we don't want to be stuck, because this is what's happened to us, to all of us. We got stuck on this rebirth and rebirth over and over, over and over and over and over, you see. So because we lost our way out, and way out is way to self. That is the way out. Over to you, Tanya.
Yeah, the way out is the way in.
That's it.
And regarding the messiness, actually, then that concept disappears, because the way then we perceive, as we were able to embrace that messiness, to embrace all of that which seemed to be inappropriate or unacceptable, or whatever it is for each one, all of a sudden the concept that there was something so bad that it could not be embraced disappears, and therefore then it's no longer messy in the way that we would judge it to be wrong. It's just completely free. It's so free that it's messy in a different kind of sense. And that delicious sensuality is that splurge of something that is uncontainable. It cannot be contained. It cannot be put into specific boxes of how it's gonna play out. How is that deliciousness of you going to happen? And regarding the past being happening right now, I usually call that the collapsing the timelines. So basically, then as we allow ourselves to bring back all of those parts that was stuck in lifetimes, and that have a root again also in this lifetime, because we have been living experiences which are related, that came from somewhere in our space of consciousness. And so that space of consciousness is so vast, but then the time has we've put it in time slots so that we could somehow deal with the intensity of all of that stuckness. But as we become present and start being available for ourselves, the timelines start collapsing into the vastness of the space that we are. And then there is all of a sudden no past, present, and future. There's just now. That's there all there is. And that's why also sort of sitting trying to imagine what it's gonna be like is an interesting thing to do. I mean, it can be fun, but in a way, uh, it has to be in a way that is not set in stone. Like you said, is yeah, you can just sit and enjoy imagining stuff, which is which is also delicious, but not necessarily attached to the expectation that that delicious thing that you tapped into is exactly what's going to happen. Because then what happens is so beyond our imaginings that our imagining was just sort of like an ingredient. It was an ingredient for the cake to be blended, and then that it can go into the oven and come out with its own particular flavor that is so unique. It's always so unique because it's created from a now moment that's a blend of so many different things that we can't even put our finger on all of them. It's impossible as incarnated beings, but we do have a sense, and we have that sense of exquisite uniqueness. So if by any chance anyone listening has the tendency to find some sort of escape in imagining brilliant futures, I would also say, yeah, that's wonderful, but not necessarily something to stay attached to. It is one way of creating new potentials, of putting those potentials out there, but that not necessarily that you're going to experience them in that way that you are imagining. So basically, leaving the door open, leaving the door so wide open that even the potentials that you could never imagine are also yours, and they're all yours. And that's why it's so intense, because it's just all possible. And that's what we mean when we say that nothing is impossible. It's not that you're going to stand on the roof and jump and think that you're Superman and all of a sudden you're going to fly. That's not what nothing is impossible means. What nothing is impossible means is that this cauldron of potentials that is born from the collapsed timelines into the now moment, and the sum total of all that we are beyond our perception and conception in the whole universe, the whole universal one that we are, all of that together creates the possibility of all impossibles. And then you see, oh, okay, I can put a rocket on my back and then I can fly. Like once I went to a concert, a Michael Jackson concert, and at the end, he just took off. I mean, he just flew off the stage. And so, yeah, so you can fly. Of course you can. But I mean, you need something that you've created for that
Mm,
purpose. So he had a rucksack on his back, and then apparently that rucksack had like some a propulsion mechanism, and the guy just flew away. I mean,
mm,
it was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. And it's basically this, that it means that there are no limitations and nothing is impossible, is that there's always more than we can ever
mm,
even begin to
mm,
imagine.
mm, mm,
That is the delicious sensuality. And that is, oh my God, yes,
mm.
yes. And so that doesn't also mean, like, I saw a film called The Yes Man, so he decided to
Yes,
say yes to absolutely everything, and it's a really funny movie.
yes, yeah.
And it also doesn't mean that. It just means that your yes to that endless realm of possibilities
Mm, mm,
is there permanently. That's what it means. Sometimes you do have to say
mm-hmm.
no. And that no is part of your yes
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
well, because it defines the
Mm-hmm.
trajectory. It defines how energy is supposed to be serving you. If you're never saying clear no's, then energy just I mean is just serving your whatever else is unclear. So then it just becomes a pool of unclarity, and then, oh, why is this happening? Oh, maybe you didn't say your nose.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget about that. So yes, it's the permanent yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because in this world of duality, when you go beyond illusion, you realize that yes and no cohabit,
Mm-hmm.
that everything cohabits, that there is not necessarily one thing or the other,
Mm-hmm.
there is one thing and the other,
Mm-hmm.
the big and. And that's always there. But
Mm-hmm.
for that, the timelines have to collapse. They have to collapse, otherwise something is happening. Like it's like there's all of these channels
Mm-hmm.
on your on your infinite radio of possibilities, and if the timelines haven't collapsed, then the radio channel that's playing in the background and that you're not aware of will be dictating some of the way
Mm-hmm.
that the energy will be serving you. And therefore it's also being available. I mean, integrating past lifetimes is the same thing as integrating this one. It's all the same thing. It's all one thing. You are not this lifetime and then other past lifetimes. You're all one thing. It's all
Mm-hmm.
one, all
Mm-hmm.
happening right now, all available right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the time to be afraid is over. Really, I mean, on the planet Earth, the time to be afraid is coming to an end. We're
Mm-hmm.
going into a different kind of experience. So that time to be afraid was necessary to create separateness that we could experience it. And now it's just okay, let's just sit with the fear now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's not going to destroy me. I mean, I've been back and forth so many lifetimes and I'm still here.
And the thing is, like, we know fear so intimately, it's our companion. So
Yeah.
but like, but as a human, separate human, you're so used to just being afraid of it and running from it. But when you actually sit with it, you realize firstly, that it's okay. It's not, fear is nothing to be afraid of. You can feel it and tolerate it, and also it's very thin. It's a very, very thin layer. And so once you sit with it, you can breathe through it, and it's so thin. And all of a sudden, then you find yourself in regions of yourself that fear has stopped you from going, and you cannot access your soul self unless you actually go through those barriers that the fear has created, because the fear was used for that, for the separation game. Because it's so natural to be whole, it's so natural to be this oneness, that it actually takes incredible genius, incredible mastery from our soul self as a whole of ourselves to create the separation. That's the hard bit. It's easy to actually be whole, easy and natural and flowing and all of that. But before we go, that two ladies, two people, not ladies, two people have said, hello, so good to be with you. Much love to you as well. And another person, hello, ladies, and hello, gentlemen, back to you.
It's a lady. It's a
It's a
lady.
lady.
Jose. Yes, she is
Oh,
a lady too.
I didn't realize. I thought you were a gentleman. Well, I am so sorry, but maybe I saw your other life. That's why you're so integrated. But and what I was gonna say, with the sensuality and what you were mentioning, this visualization and stuff. So when like you said, like you mentioned, when you realize that all of these realms are separate, but when you realize that all of this is all part of yourself, part of the whole, that it's not like you go into the dream world. And like you said, for me as well, that happens, that some of the potentials that I experience, I only experience them in my half dream, half awake, or I play with them for a week. I play with some potentials just for a day, like I allow them to come into my physical reality, and then I really look at and imagine, okay, if I said yes to this potential, what would I, I would do this, then that would happen, and then I said, okay, by the end of the day, I realized, no, I'll let this potential go. So you become very, very, very playful with all of these things, and some of the things never become physical, but they are even more real, because your soul self is mainly not physical, and mainly it is just because it's so gigantic. I mean, your I am that I am it's in earthly ways is gigantic. It spans centuries, it spans universes, it spans like the mind can't imagine. So when you allow yourself to be with your soul, like I find, like as a soul, I have so much freedom not to just be here, because I am very much present here, and I deal with all that needs to be dealt with in a physical reality, and I experience sensuality in a very physical reality. But I also give myself freedom to experience these incredible other worlds that are non-physical. I am very much present as a soul in those worlds, and they operate in a very, very different way. And this has to do with these senses, because a lot of people, when we say sensuality or senses, they think of the five physical senses. So we have, or some scientists say six or seven. We're not going to go into that now, but you have the eyesight, you have hearing, and the skin, the touch, and the smell, the sense of smell. And with these we perceive physical reality. But it's not only that, it is our senses that create the realm. So these senses create the physical reality, not only perceive it. And so when we actually realize that we have about 200,000 senses that we can access as an angelic being, what that means is that some of the senses are turned a different way within ourselves. They are just as valid, but they give you then as a consciousness, they give you the ability to sense, perceive, and experience all these different realms, and for the new earth, mainly you can't really perceive it with your eyes, with physical human eyes. It's other senses that we call feelings. Under this big word of feeling, there's all these different senses. And the more you are with yourself, and the more the time passes, you all of us, you become very aware of all these different senses, and you discover them, and some then bleed through. That's what I find, bleed through in the physical reality. And my physical senses also change. So for example, let's say, there was time when I was really noticing this, because it was so new, and I could feel through my when I was walking by the ocean, I not only could feel the ocean water, I could actually smell it with my skin. So your senses become expanded. They're not just put in, nothing is anymore very boxed like. And these things are very difficult to explain, but they are also not really something to worry about. The only really main thing to concern yourself about, or like, for example, if there's something that Tanya and I are talking and you think, wow, I don't know what they're talking about. Mainly it is just because some of the things we talk about, they're very etheric. They're like, and so it's mainly to realize that you can experience all of this just by being with yourself. So being with yourself, spending that time in the now moment, breathing, taking time to be with your soul, cultivating this incredible relationship with yourself, it automatically then gives you these aha moments. Nothing else will give you aha moments. You see, you can participate in lots of things, and that helps, but it is your soul self, not that it's separate, but these kind of more ancient parts, if that's the right word, that will teach your humanness. They will teach and show, and all of a sudden the consciousness will allow you to perceive, all these incredible ways of being, all these different feelings that then give you access to all these other realms. And then you can sort of feel, our non-physical friends, and you can feel and hear them and understand them, because it's by these feelings that are really senses. So when we create these new worlds, we create them by becoming aware of these senses, and those senses then take us into these new realms and new worlds that before we were completely oblivious to. And that also then enriches the physical experience. So there is so much more to us than what we thought, and like Tanya mentioned, you just open yourself up, because the experience of it is quite different than what we imagined. Because before, our mind couldn't tell us anything about these senses, because the mind doesn't feel them, the mind doesn't perceive them, the mind doesn't perceive other realms. It just perceives its own realm, which is quite small compared to the wholeness of you. And so it doesn't have, it's like, let's say if you try to fly to Mars, and you try to use your little Vespa, you can't, Vespa is great, there's nothing wrong with it, but if you want to go to Mars, you need something else to experience that. Over to you, Tanya.
Lovely analogy. I love that one. Really wonderful. Well, in within that context about the feeling and how you're
Mm,
feeling and being with yourself. Yesterday, I was having a session with someone, and a really neat, cool tool came up for her. So I'll share it. It was the joy barometer, the joy meter. So basically the invitation is to, as you stay with yourself, if and look around and feel into your life, into your work life, into your family life, into your friend's life, into your life only with you, where does your joy barometer stand? Because really, one of the most exquisite ingredients, or I don't know how to call it, but well, characteristics of the nature of essence is joy. And there is joy in all experiences when coming from essence. And so realizing, just sitting with yourself and feeling and sensing where is your joy barometer will really be a great way to help define where you need to take action, in the sense of, okay, here it's stuck. So I sense it's sort of, because sitting with the joy barometer or the joy meter is just feeling or sensing what is it that could be in your life, that you feel, that you sense from your knowingness, that would bring that meter high up. So you sense and you feel, okay, and are those things in your life right now? Those things that as you're sitting with your joy meter and that you're feeling and sensing with these extra senses, your new earth, your experience on your own new earth, and what ingredients you bring in to make that joy barometer go up. And so how far is that you're feeling, sensing into, from what you're actually experience, what is in your reality currently right now. And so by having that perspective, you can allow yourself to align, so from a standpoint of joy, not from fear, and that already helps a lot to make it much easier, much simpler, to align with, okay, here I need to take more time for myself, or I need to find another way to do my job, or whatever it is that your sense is making that barometer stay stuck. Because at the end of the day, um actually the joyousness of love, of being the love that we are, and the way we've actually come to expand it here on earth, because love has become something completely different than what it used to be before we became humans, before we started incarnating. So it's a whole new thing. Anyway, joy and love are right beside each other. There's no way to remove one from the other. It's just part of the same cauldron of the same thing. So but because love is not a mental concept, and it's very it's harder to put a finger on it to really be able to define, because we have mental ideas about it, but love is not that.
Mm,
So it's something that you can only really tap into when the other things have collapsed and dissolved. Joy is possibly a much easier way to look at your life and really come back into the joy, because then the joy itself, when you're experiencing it, when you're living it, it brings in everything. It brings in the cash flow, it brings in the experiences, the people, the
mm,
situations, every single thing that is of that nature. And it is intense, yes, but again, that's what we are. I mean, we have never not been intense. We just
mm,
numbed ourselves
mm,
down
mhm,
in order to be able
mm,
to come to this point where we say, okay, bring it on.
mm. Yes, I completely agree, because that's what, even a few years ago, I thought that intensity would go away, and actually it's not. If anything, I even every month by month, I think, wow, this is even more intense,
Yeah.
so it even asks always more, and it always asks always to step into the next. So it's always into the unknown. And that's what that continual expansion is of yourself, because you never, it's not growth, it's not the same as growth, it's expansion. They're different, it's a different sense to it, a different feeling, and you have to experience it to realize. And there are all these subtle differences in all these words that I used to think were one thing, and then I realized, wow, but they're actually quite different, and they all are quite intense. So the intensity, I can forget about, it doesn't go away. It is more so, I feel everything more intensely. I feel other people's fear more intensely. I feel other people's worries more intensely. Feel other people's energy. I feel my own, everything. And it always asks 100%, of me. And with this love, a lot of people, explained this joy and love so beautifully. And for me, I remember when I first realized, and that's many years ago, about a thing about love, because I was always kind of expecting, and that was kind of what the society or something taught me. I can't say what taught me, that I can actually feel love through others, that others have to love me, and then I will feel love. You see, somehow that other people have this magic wand. And then when a great shift happened for me is when I realized that the only love I will ever feel is the one that I actually feel. And this is such a huge realization, but it is also such a simple one. And it's just something that people really, when they're caught in that separation, don't realize. And so they're constantly on this chase for love, and they constantly attach themselves to others, to the objects, to possessions, to identities, to jobs, to who they, to their professions, to whatever status, all sorts, because they think that if something else feels love, that they can feel it, but it's not true. So even if other people can demonstrate their love for you by gifting you, by being considerate, and all of those things that mean, but you won't feel their love. They feel that love that they're giving. You still won't feel their love. Maybe you can actually perceive their gifts, and that is why people are never also satisfied in that state, because they don't actually feel love. Let's say if I'm the one who loves you and I give you gifts as demonstration of that love, or I give you time or whatever, I'm feeling love. You're still not feeling it until you feel it. But once you start then feeling that love, allowing yourself to permeate you, then you realize slowly, for me, it was like a fairly slow process that I realized, wow, it's not dependent on other things. It's just something that I can cultivate regardless if anyone showers me with gifts, regardless if anyone likes me, regardless of all of these things that before society said, no, this is important. None of that was important. And this is where, people sort of look for power and they feel powerlessness. But this is the self-empowering thing, when you take back ownership of all of your feelings, of your sensuality. You take back ownership of your love. And so in the same way, everything else that you feel, you realize slowly over time that is your choice. I realized, wow, so if I can feel love regardless of what other people do, that's incredible mastery. And then I can choose all these other things that I can feel. And then I can tap into all these potentials, and I can choose different potentials than what the society is choosing, especially right now when they're choosing fear, when they're choosing battles, when they're choosing all of these things. And it's because they inside of themselves don't feel safety. Inside of themselves, they don't feel freedom. Inside of themselves, they don't feel joy and love. And so they feel controlled by others. But when you start really to feel these things, own them, they are yours. And when you realize, I can feel whatever I want to feel, and it's right, exactly what I feel is absolutely right. There is no one out there that can, well, yes, they can have opinion and that's their right, but there's no one out there that can actually boss me around to tell me. They can try, and then you say no, you see. So these are the kind of real empowering things, and they are always present with you. That's that simplicity, the brilliant simplicity of each one of us that is imbued in these incredible tools into the everyday physical reality, where it's a lie that you have to go somewhere, that you have to chase something, that you have to become something. All of those, nothing wrong with them. They are the joy to experience, but they are not the giver of these very basic but incredible self-empowering things, which are owning your own feelings, your own love, your own joy, your own freedom, and owning it, feeling it, and playing with it and exploring with it, and allowing yourself for all of these feelings and internal happenings, not the mind, not up here in the mind, but in your body, in the presence of now moment, which you come into through breathing. You allow yourself to expand for all of these things, to show you who you are, to show you what you can do, to show you your talents, to show you who you really are and what is possible, to show you potentials. That's how you see potentials. You don't, that's how you feel potentials. That's how you allow all your talents to become real. And as you own those, then all of a sudden you can then open yourself up to more potentials that, for example, 2 years ago, you wouldn't even dare think about that this could also be you. You see, that's how you cultivate yourself as this incredible garden that includes all these things, and everything that you have inside. You have everything inside of you, and this will then show you who you are, show you the inner ropes, so to speak, show you the inner empowerment, show you the strength, how you can say no, how you can say yes, how you can leave some situations that are maybe abusive. And by abusive, I don't mean that someone has to beat you up. Perhaps, your workplace is abusive, and perhaps before it felt okay, and all of a sudden, because you're now honoring yourself, you're now loving yourself, you're allowing to feel those feelings, you realize so many times, that's what you realize, wow, this is actually an abusive situation that I'm in, but I didn't know that before. And that's how you, let's say, improve your life in a way that you become more free and more joyful, because you realize it, you see how awful it really is, because before it was just normal, but now with more consciousness, you realize so many things that are barbaric, really, that are very toxic. And then you just deal with them. You don't beat yourself up that you've allowed that kind of situation, that you've allowed yourself in that kind of situation. So that's another incredible tool that is essential on this journey, that you stop beating yourself up. You just realize it. You learn how to move on, and then you move on and you change your life. And so all of a sudden, few years pass, and all of a sudden you find yourself in this incredible free and joyful life that didn't happen by accident. It happened through your mastery. It happened because you own yourself. It happens because you own your feelings, you own your values, you own who you are. You don't have to define who you are. You don't have to ask your mind to write down who you are, because you can leave that freedom and mystery and that openness for everything to come in. And then you just continue to explore, and you continue to evolve or expand in this way, and you continue to express yourself through different creativity, through different things that you didn't think were possible. And your life is actually very quite different than what it was before. And but it always asks 100% of you, and it always supports you as well. 100%. You are never alone. You always get this continual well of well-being that supports you. And you also experience frustrating times, crappy days, some all sorts of things. And you just learn, okay, yeah, even this will pass. You move on. And it's these kind of skills that really make your life so completely different. And it all comes from within. Over to you.
And it's interesting also because being available to change, to
Mm,
continuously change. Like, for instance, you might have said yes to something at a certain point, so to a certain partnership, to a certain job, whatever. And at that point, that was okay. And it's not that it was toxic or anything, that was just perfectly fine at that moment. But the thing is, things change. People change, they have different kinds of experiences, and then the blend of you with them might no longer be appropriate for you. So you have to also be available to
mhm,
notice how you're feeling and how the
mm,
feeling evolves and changes over time. So maybe something that you were involved in at a certain point and was just so perfect, and that was just the
mm,
thing, and you knew from your heart, you were really listening to your intuition, so you're sure that that was it, that that was something to do, to say yes to be, to participate in. But then at a certain point after, like, it doesn't matter how long, can be a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just because you're in touch with yourself, you start feeling something has changed, something is different, the interaction is no longer fluid, there's eventually starts to be feeding, energy feeding or whatever. You start feeling it, you have these senses, because having those senses open also gives you the opportunity to be very, very aware of things immediately.
mm,
And so you feel those shifts. And then it's just, oh no, and now what? Like the human will be, oh no, maybe now I have to leave this, but then what's gonna happen, and how am I gonna do that? And or are they gonna be hurt or whatever? All of those things, that come up. But the main thing is you. You have to choose for you. And if you stay in that situation, you're actually being a nuisance to yourself and to the other people too, because you are just condoning and perpetuating
mm,
a situation that does not provide freedom, that does not provide balance. So, um, contrary to eventually what one might think, that oh, but if I leave, then I mean, they're gonna be angry at me, or this or that, or whatever, doesn't matter. And then so you just keep on staying in the situation just because maybe they need you. I mean, oh gosh, no one needs you. I mean, yeah, this is maybe hard to digest. no one needs you in that way, that you have to stay involved in something that is imbalanced just for the sake of being needed. And so if you're going to remove yourself from that situation, you're going to allow that person or people to realize maybe they do have the power that they were
Mhm.
somehow trying to get from you, like trying to
Mhm.
get that whatever stability, whatever you were providing. If you're always there playing that part, and then it's no longer a true part because you're no longer feeling whole, you're no longer feeling fulfilled, you're no longer balanced, so then
Mm.
it becomes a lie. So then what you're providing is just a lie, nothing else. And they will never be able to stop and feel shaken to a point where they need to just dive inside, because we all know, all of us, every single one of us knows that while we are evolving, the only way we really stop and look at things is when we're shaken, is when things are shaken, is when
Mm.
somehow we have to. And
Mhm.
then the other thing I'd like to share in that context is that many times, um, for instance, we love someone or a child, like our children or whatever, we have this special love for someone, and they're not wanting to receive it. And then somehow we become hurt or whatever. Well, we believe that they're hurting us or whatever, that they're not wanting to receive that love. But the interesting thing is that when you have landed in that love inside of you, and which is permanently there, and so you are in love, you are love 100% of the time, it's like you're walking in a cloud of love. And so you can just, yeah, you can go ahead and give it. And even if no one's receiving it, it doesn't really matter because it's yours anyway. I mean, it's always in your own cloud of love. So it never goes to waste.
Mhm.
So if
Mhm.
you feel like, I don't know, somehow having a loving gesture towards someone, and then they reject it, or they I don't know, they don't appreciate it or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If they don't appreciate it, it's irrelevant. But that they don't receive it and that you somehow feel it went to
Mm.
waste, it doesn't, because you receive it anyway. Because the interesting thing is, because you wanted to sort of share that love, you brought it uh, up, further up. So you elevated your love decibels. The sound of love in your cloud
Mm.
went up. And so if someone else is not receiving it, you get the whole thing. Oh my God, isn't that a wonderful gift you're giving yourself?
Mm.
So love never is wasted. Never, ever, ever, ever. But for it to be really useful, you have to be in it. You have to
Mm.
allow it. You have to be it, so that it's just there and you are it, and therefore there's
Mhm.
nothing else you can be. I mean,
Mm.
it's always a sort of a dance. And as you dance that dance with others, the only thing you can do is enhance love.
Mm.
There's nothing else you can do, really. Even if it's not being received, if it's not being acknowledged, whatever, it doesn't matter, because the only thing you're doing is
Mm.
enhancing it, and
Mm.
you're receiving the
Mm.
full package. So, you know, if you're in a state that you're feeling that love flowing from every
Mm.
pore of you, oh my God, by all means, go ahead and share it. Why not?
Mm.
Doesn't matter if anyone's looking or receiving or whatever. It doesn't
Mm.
matter.
Mm.
Just allow that huge flood to happen for
Mm.
you, and then whatever.
Mm.
This is basically what the benching thing, like sitting and
Mm.
radiating your love, is all about. It's just this: radiate the whole thing.
Mm.
Don't be shy. Don't be mingy. Don't,
Stingy. I
oh,
think
stingy.
stingy. Yeah.
Yeah, don't be stingy. Don't try and, oh no, maybe then I won't have enough or
Mm,
whatever, or maybe they don't want it. Oh, who cares?
mm,
Just be the whole thing.
mm,
Be that whole package of
mm,
delicious sensuality
mm,
without being bothered if anyone is looking.
mm.
It's
That
just the whole of you.
you as beautifully said, and you just radiate it, and you can see it on your face. You know this. And Jose or Jose. She said, so beautiful the way both of you talk about joy and love. For me, compassion is also a big part of that. And yes, and this is how, when Tanya worked compassion into her, what she was talking about, because compassion is this ability to let things just be as they are. Because before
Yeah.
that, we put all the mind, or we put all these conditions on things. So for example, let's say one practice to feel love is, you can feel love for flowers, it's easy to feel love for animals, for pets, for sunset, for beautiful nature, for beautiful buildings, beautiful art. It is a little bit more challenging when we play with people, because with people, as people, we in a normal human relationship, before there's so many strings attached, and there's so many conditions. I will love you if you will love me if. And so on love, we also put on these feelings of love. It's actually not unconditional in that space. It is your whole soul self that brings the real unconditionality. So people always talk about this, oh, unconditional love, unconditional love. But until you actually allow the connection with your divinity, you don't really know what it means, this unconditional, because this unconditional means that you have to walk through that valley of shadow, because it's there that you learn what unconditional really means, because you accept and allow parts of you to integrate that you have put incredible conditions on, and you rejected them. And so in there you learn how the soul part, if we use words that separate these parts, which are really all you, but the soul parts teaches the human part, not teaches but just its presence. Then it teaches, shows the human part, this unconditional love, what it really means. And what it really means is when it accepts the unacceptable. And then, so when you come through that, you really realize, and you've redirected your energy flow. So instead of being horizontal, as feeding, as needing things, as needing acceptance, as needing all these things from others, as in a way of feeding, you've by that time redirected yourself, so that you need all that you need comes from your inner self, comes from this inner well. And then you can really be free in this way, that you can really feel love and give it freely without waiting for anyone to reciprocate. And the funny thing is that most of the time things do reciprocate. All of a sudden animals behave differently, nature behaves differently, children behave differently first, because they feel it still the most, and then adult people. And then you start to really loosen those kind of awful karmic ancestral bondages, slavery, really enslaving relationships. But it's all energetic, and especially like when you look in family, how we get triggered by our family members not being who we think they should be, not behaving, not giving us attention, not giving us love, and all these things. And then we can really become unconditional, meaning that we just allow others. Of course, we can perceive, we actually acutely, incredibly strongly, with clarity perceive what is happening with another person, but we also have this compassion, which means that we can allow them to be who they are. But the compassion that the mind used to think it was, and that the mass consciousness thinks compassion is, they think that compassion is by continually getting involved with someone else's life and trying to change them so they can be in the image that we think they should be. You see, so that's that energetic bondage. But with the real compassion that comes from the soul, that your deeper divine self, humanness is also divine, but it's just using these imperfect words to describe something. When it all comes from there, that's the real compassion, because it's not trying to change anything. It accepts everything as it is. Just like Tanya so beautifully described, you just can radiate that love without any care in the world. Is anybody going to accept it? Because like you said, Tanya, if the only love that you're going to feel is the one you feel, so whether you feel it for flower, whether you feel it for a person, whether you feel it for a child, whatever, it's the one that you feel. It's if they respond, that's wonderful. If they don't respond, you have still spent that hour, for example, feeling love. What better way to spend your day but to feel love? And it is really so simple, and yet it takes years to unchain yourself from all these chains, to realize, to free yourself. And so that's why, there is a reason why it takes time, because within the physical reality, the soul self, you as an angel decided, I'm going to become physical so that I can really see every little step of the way. So the human self would like everything to be from the beginning to an end, like in 3 seconds, especially if it's not comfortable. But from your greater self, from your soul self, or the I am that I am, whatever, as people have all these different words that they call this, it wants wisdom from every step along the way. It wants to feel deeply how it was that you've realized, how it was that you've had those aha moments, how it was that you've become master in relationship with your fears, how it was that you've noticed your feelings, how it was that you've moved from the mind into the now moment. These are those diamonds. These are the incredible diamonds, the wisdom that the soul gets from the journey. So the humanness at one stage realizes just how incredible, divine, and precious the human life is. And that's so different to what, the mass society taught it, that humans are bad and they just destructive and all sorts of all these things. But in reality, when you realize what service the humanness, the human self, is providing to the whole self by being the experience of this incredible adventure we call earthly realm. And so you get a very, very different kind of experience of yourself, and you see things very, very differently. What things are, how you perceive your day, how you perceive your people around you. And yet someone, let's say, you're sitting on your bench, someone just walking past would just think, oh, look, that person is very boring. They're just sitting there, maybe smiling to themselves. And yet you are just experiencing this whole universe of yourself, and it is again that simplicity, that all you need is a simple bench or a tree trunk or whatever, that is everything that you have, everything that you need, you have right where you are.
And an interesting thing also that came up a few days ago, a friend was sharing that all the human interactions are energy feeding interactions, the way she was perceiving it from
Mm,
what she became aware of. And yes, until no. So,
mm, mm,
what do I mean by that? Um, while we are perceiving ourselves as not enough, and that every single human goes through this because it's part of the experience of
mm,
being on earth, is to be able to experience that not enoughness. And so while one is experiencing oneself as not enough, there will always be energy feeding in the interactions with each other. But once then we start landing into this compassion, that it's the same thing as unconditional love, it's all the same thing, it's just different words we use for it. Once we start landing in that compassion, where we start collecting our treasures, which mainly lie in the darkness and in the shadow, and we start collecting all of that back into our treasure chest, well, then something fundamental changes. What changes is that we start producing energy, the new energy, we start producing it
Mm,
from that new one that we become, rather than having to go and get it somewhere because we aren't enough and therefore we can't have enough or produce enough or be enough or whatever. So then something changes, and then our interactions become creative energy exchanges and not energy feeding games again. And so there's nothing wrong or right with energy feeding, because that's the way things work once
mm,
when we're not whole. That's how it goes. Then when you shift and realize, oh, wait a minute, I am not only enough, I am much more than enough. So something fundamental shifts inside of you because you are conscious of that. And consciousness is that which makes energy move. It is consciousness that defines the way energy is going to serve you.
mm,
So if you are in a consciousness of fulfillment, of wholeness, of contentment, of bliss, of compassion, unconditional love, all of these things, then energy will be serving precisely that kind of
mm,
consciousness. And in that kind of consciousness, energy is exchanged
mm.
in a way that is creative. And why is it creative?
And
Because
pleasurable, and
you're
it's
not
very
exactly.
pleasurable. Yes.
And that's why it's creative, because something new comes of it all the
Mm,
time. Some you
mm,
are enhanced and the other one is enhanced. So instead of being depleting, which was the energy
mm,
feeding thing, in order for you to get energy, the other one had to be depleted, and vice versa. Now it's a completely different thing. It's enhancing. So in this creative energy exchange, we enhance each other and we expand through it. And basically on earth, it's not possible to create without this incredible network of all. Like, for instance, if you go and buy a car, right? I mean, yeah, you decided, you created
mm,
the possibility, all of that, but someone had to collect all of the raw materials and then bring them into the
mhm,
factory, and then they had to be put together by other people, and then they had to be taken to the car stand, and all of these things. So there are always others in this creative energy exchange. That's the way it works. So we are here finding out about our own wholeness and tapping into the pool of all of the collective.
mhm,
So the collective is always serving our
mhm,
wholeness choices, be they wholeness or not, because we can be choosing from a point of lack, and therefore we have to use
mhm,
effort, and we still manage to create stuff. We still manage to put our life together and move along,
mhm,
but it's always a co-creation at some level. And a co-creation, not meaning that we need each other, it's just the thing, it's just how all of this works. It is a co-creation
mm,
one way
mhm,
or another.
mhm, mhm,
So basically, if you're in that point that you are that vessel that recognizes herself or himself as wholeness, oh my God, imagine, like, if you can see the network, what changes in the network. And now if there's 100,000 of those, and there's a million and a billion, and oh wow, wow, that network just becomes such a blast,
mm,
because the possibilities of that creative energy exchange, they just become, oh my
mm.
God, they blow our mind.
Yeah, they do. And I was going to mention something that you started with what you explained is, when you choose to feel satisfied, for example, or all of these things, it's actually turned around at a certain stage when you realize, like what the mass consciousness is teaching, the separation is teaching, that you need certain conditions have to be met before you can feel something. So for example, again, you put conditions are put on things. So okay, for me to be satisfied, my family has to be this, my children have to be this, my husband or wife have to be this, my job have to be this, my boss. You see, we put all of these conditions, and then I will be satisfied, you see, or
Yeah.
and then I will feel joyful, or and then I will be able to one day do something, that one day. But the trick here, what happens is that you actually turn this around, because you realize that we, each of us, are a creator of our own reality. That means that I have to feel something and experience it first, and then it creates its, it will flow into my physical reality, because my energy will respond to what I've chosen, and how I've chosen it, by that I allow that space to flow into me. I allow the
Mm-hmm.
satisfaction to flow into me, and then it permeates me. Let's say I choose satisfaction, it
Mm-hmm.
permeates me, and then the energy life responds, and
Yeah.
everything becomes satisfying. And even if something that before would perhaps trigger me, I go then through the process to release that, firstly to see it, that it's triggering me, that is something that is not in harmony. I resolve it, whatever, because I know then how to resolve it as a whole being. And then there are lots of different things that have happened in this creative process. Yes, you
Yeah.
firstly allow that feeling, everything starts changing. But then that also means, because we are physical, because we are human, we do also have to do some physical things, which means that perhaps we need to allow some other people in that weren't in before. And you go through then meeting someone new, and perhaps in the past you were uncomfortable with meeting. You see, all of these practical things still happen, but happen with your self-support, happen in a very, very different and not stressful way, but in a joyful way. But you keep having to choose. And when you actually start to really realizing yourself as a creator, and actually it can be a challenge later too, because then the mass consciousness, especially if you live close to, let's say, in the city, you're constantly feeling other people the way they are, and they are not in that space. So you can constantly be pushed into the fear, into all of this, until you really, constantly have to choose. No, I feel satisfied. And you have to sometimes choose it every 2 minutes, you see, when
Mm-hmm.
initially. So you have to keep choosing, and become completely determined and completely uncompromising in what you're choosing, and what you then do with what you're choosing, because what you're chosen will then ask you to allow your
Yeah.
life to change, to
To be
to
honest.
fit, and to fit with that. Because if your life is not satisfying to you, you see, because this is what happens. You think, okay, I want to feel satisfaction, I have to do physical things, so then I can actually do satisfying. No, you feel satisfaction, but then you still have to do physical things to fit in with this new image of yourself
Yeah.
that you're feeling. So you will still have to resolve those things that are not satisfying, but they become much easier because you're not forcing anything. So you're not forcing things and making things to change, like things that you have to then let go of. You realize that you've overgrown them, so it's much easier to let go, because you realize, wow, I don't need these things. It's not like someone has to pull them away from you, or that you have to
Mm-hmm.
discipline yourself to pull them away, but you all naturally become in this space. And yes, of course, you still allow maybe sadness and grief. Everything that is part of that process will visit you, and you just be with it. You in compassion, meaning in unconditional levels, meaning you allow all of these things to speak with you, to have a say, because you've learned to deal with yourself on all levels with respect, to deal with yourself with honor, to deal with yourself with self-love. And that is a very, very different thing than what you used to be. and so you are, perhaps you look the same, but you are a very, very different kind of person. And so that was one thing that I wanted to mention. And also another more practical thing, there is one thing that very often, for example, just an example, let's say when many people feel they need to be needed, and it is especially very feminine, many women feel they need to be needed, or perhaps at work you feel, wow, I am a person that they can't replace, and this is something that gives you, so that's that energy feeding. You need that to feed you energy. You need that to give you that sense of self-worth, that you feel that a place can't do without you. But you're very, very then entrapped in this game, because you have to continually to put a lot of energy out. You have to continually go out of your way to support that image. So for example, let's say people who are workaholics, they're caught in this kind of game, because the image that they have, oh, I'm a good worker, I have a good standing, people like me, or my job place couldn't do without me, so you have to do a lot, and you experience a lot of stress to fit with that image, until one day then when you realize, wow, I am feeding, like Tanya said, it doesn't, you just one day you just realize these things, and then you start letting go of that, and then you realize the freedom when, yes, you have to accept that you are not irreplaceable, that many other people can do that job maybe even better than you, because while you were in that game, you were stopping for example, from, I'm talking this from self-experience, so I'm not talking about anyone else, but like maybe then when you leave, you realize, wow, whoever replaced me all of a sudden brought new things in, and new knowledge and new everything, and company woof, went up. So it's good for both sides. And I could be stuck in that shame and guilt and feeling bad about myself, or you can just realize, wow, this is part of this incredible journey. That was the game I played, and I can just move on. Because in this experience, it's very many times that you realize this thing, when you realize, wow, I was caught in a certain game, and you can easily fall into guilt and shame and putting yourself down, blah blah blah, but you just have to learn to move on. And that happens also within family, when some people feel that, okay, I do so much, look, nobody else does it better, that's why I have to be, because I do the job perfectly. So a lot of people then don't have then time for themselves, because they try to keep that image happening. It's only me that can do this job perfectly. But when you let go of the control, you realize, no, other family members can also do this job, and maybe the first time they won't do it the way I like it, or maybe they will always do it the way they like it. Maybe it'll even be better, or maybe it won't be. But you have to just keep releasing those kind of games in your life, and that's what releases your time and your energy that then you can spend on that bench, or wherever you are, that you spend that time, quality time with yourself. Because that quality time with yourself is you can't replace that. You don't actually go anywhere without. And that's how you release that time in your day, when you step out of those kind of games that before you didn't even recognize. But as you allow the presence of your soul, all of a sudden more consciousness is there. More consciousness shines light on all of these situations in your life. You then have it also brings all the abilities that you need to resolve those things, and that can mean also other people like Tanya and I that assist, books, you get all support from all sorts of ways that then help you on that journey. And you keep making yourself freer and freer and freer, and more joyful and more loving. And before you know it, you wake up one day, you look in the mirror and you realize, wow, I am a realized master. You see, but and it's not, it's all inbuilt inside of yourself.
Actually, it's interesting because you've been answering Maya Zagar's question here
Oh.
that she placed here, which says, I seem to always seek advice from others. Okay, many give it to me without asking, but how do I listen to my feelings only?
Mhm,
And how to handle this in a relationship, as this
mhm,
feels like making soul decisions, soul, I mean alone, based on my energy feeling within me. Well, yeah, you can only make decisions within you. That's the only thing you can do. You can't make decisions for anyone else, and we actually trap ourselves
mm,
into that illusion that we can somehow make decisions for others. But
mhm,
that is really not the case. It's just that what you were sharing, Alexis, this energy feeding game, that's the only thing. It seems like that we're making decisions for others, but you can
mm,
only ever make decisions for you. But once you start really making decisions for you and land in that compassion, then you can see the other from a different
mm,
light and have compassion as well for them being the way they are, for them
mhm,
behaving the way they do, but that you don't need to go into that. You
mm.
respect it, you don't have to change it, but you don't have to uh,
Engage.
engage and
Yes.
keep it going. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, you disengage from this kind of energy. And
Yeah,
like you said, how do you know your feelings? It is that you spend quality time with
with
yourself.
yourself.
And whether that is, if for some people it just means they lie down, put headphones on, and listen to music and feel themselves in their body and breathe. And for some people you can sit somewhere in nature and observe. So one of the biggest things really is, for me, when the biggest change happened is when I committed to, okay, for 2 weeks I'm going to spend two hours a day sitting somewhere in nature and just observing, and keep coming back to myself, noticing what my mind is doing, noticing how my mind is taking me in the future, how my mind. And for a few days it was hell, because I realized, and it was shocking, because I realized how non-present I was and how easy it was for my mind to take me. I was all over the place. And then, to my surprise, because I committed myself to this, I really committed myself and say, yeah, this is it. I've tried all these different things. I've tried meditation, blah, 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 for decades, but now this is it, either do or die kind of thing. And then it only took like 3 days, and then the opening happened. It was so quick, because all of yourself, your soul self, is always present, and it knows everything that you're doing. So when you commit yourself, your whole part or your whole being is there to support you, and it doesn't want to hide from you. So in those mini seconds, in those few seconds that I managed in those first few days to be present in the now moment, I actually got enough from my soul, enough nourishment, all of a sudden enough openings to then be able to go to the next stage. So it was actually quite miraculous, because as a human, I really realized, wow, I am not alone. And I could feel my soul self as such a distinct presence, when I couldn't then say, oh, that was just an imagination, because it was real. And then slowly, no, not slowly even, you become so mesmerized, so supported by this, when you actually start feeling yourself on this level, that all of it, and then its presence of this consciousness allows you and helps you to deal with your life, that all of a sudden you manage to then find more time, because you, like I mentioned before, you step out of the games, you step out of doing things for others that they should be doing for themselves, you step out of all these things, and you become a much more, how can I say, decisive person, a person that others have to reckon with, within your life, because they know they can't use you. They know that you choose respect, so then they respect you. So then all of a sudden again, then you release time and energy that again you can then spend more time doing things that you enjoy. So you see, this whole thing really works in unison. It's not
Mm-hmm.
separated. It works within your life. It knows intimately how your life works. It knows intimately what you do. So for example, when I was participating at that time with someone else, my teacher, in this way, and he was doing his live sessions in some weird day, no, not on the weekend, and somehow my work just fixed itself so that I was always free. I never in 2 3 years or 4 years even missed a live session, and I didn't actually have to do anything special for it. And
Yeah.
then he changed the day to a different day, but my job also by itself changed. So again, I was free on that day, you see, because I did need at that time this kind of support. I did
Mm-hmm.
need it because you can feel, you become like Tanya mentioned before, you become very destabilized for a reason. You become destabilized because the old starts to break down, as it has to, because you've made the choice to become new. And so the old has to break down. So you need the support and you need the encouragement. And it's not that you're really seeking someone else to tell you, because you're actually choosing to continually to be with you, and in that space you learn your own wisdom, your own everything. But it just helps that you see someone who also is doing, experiencing simple things. And sometimes the advice the soul can give you is through another. So it's not that you have to choose, oh, no more this or no more that, but as long as you take that time for yourself to spend that quality time with yourself, so that you can practice that being present in the now moment, and allow the light of consciousness then to shine consciousness into every part, enlighten every part of your life from the inside. Then that's how you come into this place of joy, of mastery, of realization, whatever you call it. It's only like that. You can't buy it, you can't download it from someone else. You have to experience it for yourself. But at the same time, utilize all the things that you as a soul are giving to yourself as support, because some supports come from inside. And as you are spending time with your soul self, you develop this sense, like Tanya mentioned, of clarity, of vision, of being able to straight away see, okay, this is appropriate, this is not appropriate. And then of course comes time when your inner voice takes you in a completely different space than perhaps your support group. And not because there's something wrong with the support group, but because you need to hear the voice of yourself clearly, and then a while later you come back, you see. So the meandering and experiences of yourself in this integration takes all sorts of turns. So and you can't compare your journey to other people. You come to a place when you realize, wow, we are all so unique, and some things I can relate and some things are different, and they're not even in order. Like, so you can't, even if you travel with a friend on this journey, you realize, you come to a place, wow, you realize, wow, they are doing different and I'm doing different. And so for a while you come separate, and that's very appropriate, because even the most closest friend is not you. You see, in this integration, you have to realize that completeness of yourself, your own sovereignty, so that from that space then you can come out and be with everyone else in fully present way. But you always realize your own sovereignty, your own oneness, your own, and that's how you also stop all that feeding games. But it's all very gradual. It's not, as I said, it's for a reason gradual, because the soul wants to gain all that wisdom from every step, from every experience. And it just enjoys this kind of, you know you as a soul enjoy this kind of experience. Like, it's incredible. And this is sometimes when you realize how the soul self enjoys, the human self can become really pissed off because for the human self, it's not always comfortable, but for the soul self, it's just like, oh, wow, look at this, it's like this big child with these big eyes, and everything is just, so that's where, it becomes all very incredibly interesting and very unique how each person perceives it. And I think, Tanya, it's
Yeah.
10:30. So, okay, do you want to
We're
explain?
on time for our new energy waltz,
Yes.
which today we are offering as a gift.
Yeah.
So we have 11 places anyway. Well, we don't have 11 places right now. We have 5 places that are vacant.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to pitch in, there's still space.
So just
And so we'll,
go to either of our website and sign in
and
through
it's
Zoom.
there. The link is
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yeah. Sign in through
that's
Zoom.
it.
Yeah. And
So we're
so,
just jumping directly to that, and
yeah,
that is not live, so it won't be shared on any
it
platform or
is
anything.
live,
It's a
but it's not.
private call. Yeah, no, exactly. It's not shared with the
Yeah.
public. It's private.
Yeah, it's a private group. So our new energy walls is a private group that we meet, normally. What do we do the week after the living,
Yeah,
the week after this live public show?
living in the
We
flow.
That's right, we do new energy walls, which is we meet privately as a group, but it's also live, and it is recorded. So we send a recording to everyone, but normally it costs $111. But today, because it's at the December, we're offering to for free straight after. So
So it's our gift to
yeah,
everyone, and it for us it's also a gift because,
that's
as I
right.
said
Yes.
before, when we're sitting in this space where we just sharing the whole contentment of it all, it just grows.
Yeah, and a lot of people, then they want to discuss things that they like. You can sort of post questions like this anonymously, but
Yeah,
it is
and we
much.
will be
Yeah,
speaking to each other.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's more interactive and much more personal as well.
yeah,
And you can just be there and share whatever you'd like to
yeah,
share with your own
yeah.
voice.
Yeah. And for
And
some people, they don't want video. If you don't want video, that's okay as well. You can log on just with the sound, and still be a little bit anonymous. Because I know for some people, video can be very, full on. So yeah, we're there. We're open. So we're
thank you
gonna,
very
yeah,
much. I wish you a wonderful season of a celebration, basically ongoing celebration, as Alexis said at the beginning. Be it alone, be it with family, be it with friends, whatever. I mean, the ongoing celebration of your crystalline self, which
yeah.
is the Christ consciousness, is
Mm.
your crystalline self. So
And
may you celebrate that in whichever way is appropriate for you and that you enjoy the most.
and Happy New Year. And we will see in this way. We'll play with you. We're looking forward to playing with you in the
Yeah.
new year in January. And from
Yes.
us,
Thank you.
we say goodbye, namaste, and all the best.
All the best. Bye bye. Thank you.